The 2025 Anderson Tendulkar Trophy was an absolute blast of a series. Almost 7,000 runs, 1,860 overs, 41 dropped catches, and 25 days later, the series was drawn 2-all. So let's break down match by match, the key performances, player statistics, key moments, and a few more things. Let's get to it. The first test at Leeds was marked by Shubman Gill's tidy 100, stamping his authority as India's new test captain. Jasprit Bumrah being Jasprit Bumrah, nagging another overseas fifer, India's dropped catches, and Basball chasing down yet another big total. Now, one of the most important reasons why India lost this test was their first innings collapse from 430 for 3 to 471 all out, losing 7 wickets for 40 odd runs. Now, that was not acceptable on a pitch that was an absolute heaven for batsmen. And Basball being Basball, they took on India's bowlers, especially Prasidh Krishna, who struggled with his lines and lengths in the first test match, in both innings actually, and he leaked runs at an economy of more than 6. Ollie Pope got 100, Harry Brook got 99. He was actually out on a duck, but that turned out to be a no ball, and the bowler was Jasprit Bumrah. The only bowler who looked threatening was Bumrah, and Prasidh Krishna did manage to get 3 wickets, but that came at a big cost. And very surprisingly, Shardul Thakur bowled only 6 overs when he had come in as a bowling all-rounder. You see, under Gautam Gambhir's coaching tenure, time and again we've seen that he tries to strengthen the batting lineup by adding a batting/bowling all-rounder, and a lot of times, as we've seen, it has backfired. Because Thakur bowled only 6 overs, and that I think was just not enough to support India's 4-3-man bowling lineup. What happened was India managed to get to 470 on a batting paradise, where their tail absolutely vanished in no time. And England, after being 400 for 7, their tail wagged big time, and they were able to get very, very close to India's first innings total. Not to forget the dropped catches of Jasprit Bumrah in that innings. It was just a very ordinary piece of fielding by India. Well, in the second innings, Rahul and Pant got magnificent hundreds. Pant got 2 hundreds in that match in the first and the second innings. But unfortunately, India's tail didn't wag yet again, and they were all out for 364 after being in a pretty good position at 333 for 4. This again gave England the chance to come back into the test match, and they fancied their chase, as they have been really good at chasing recently. And what India feared most happened in the fourth innings of the test match, when Jack Crawley and Ben Duckett got off to a rollicking start with a partnership of 188, and it looked like India had absolutely no answers to England's opening partnership before they struck 2 blows. But in the end, England just managed to get across the line with 5 wickets in hand. Although there was a rough outside the left-hander's off stump, where Ravindra Jadeja really troubled Ben Stokes, and Stokes departed for a scratchy 33, trying to reverse sweep Jadeja off that rough. But England managed to chase down the target with 5 wickets in hand, and India were left to answer a lot of questions before the next test match, which was at Edgbaston, where they had won 0 test matches till date. The MVP of this match was no doubt Ben Duckett for his 64 in the first innings and his rollicking 149 that helped England to a 5-wicket victory in the second innings. Moving on to the second test match, before the start of the test match, one thing that surprised me a lot was that they dropped Sai Sudarshan immediately after the first test match. He did get a duck in the first innings, but he scored a gritty 30 in the second, and he looked pretty decent, and I don't think it was fair on him that they dropped him after just 1 test match. Anyway, India were asked to bat again on a batting paradise, and they scored 590 on the back of Shubman Gill's exquisite 269, the highest test score for an Indian test captain ever. They had fixed the issues from the previous test match. They didn't let England come back after the fall of a wicket, and they continued batting and batting and batting until they got out. And this led to a huge score of 590. And Ravindra Jadeja stitched a huge partnership of 200 plus with Shubman Gill, where India were kind of struggling at 211 for 5. And Jadeja didn't look like he would get out before Josh Tongue bowled a brute of a bouncer to him with the new ball and sent him packing. That was before the Shubman Gill juggernaut kept rolling against England from a double hundred to a commanding 269. And with that, he now sits atop the list of highest individual test scores by an Indian captain. And then towards the end of the day started England's first innings, and the pitch looked like it was an absolutely different surface from what India had just played on. Akashdeep and Siraj bowled beautifully, and they sent the top order packing, and England were left reeling at 25 for 3. Then Joe Root and Harry Brook had a partnership of 50 odd runs, and they ended the day without any more loss of wickets. The partnership was cut short when Mohammad Siraj's double strike got England reeling at 80 odd for 5, with Jamie Smith and Harry Brook at the crease and just the tail behind them. Then Harry Brook and Jamie Smith got a 300-run partnership, and the pitch started looking like the pitch it was when India batted in the first innings. It looked like India had no answers to their batting before Akashdeep struck again, and the rest of the lineup was cleaned up pretty quickly. India were still the favourites, and they didn't disappoint. They amassed a massive 427 for 6 before declaring, with Shubman Gill leading the way again with a daddy 100, scoring 161, and Rishabh Pant scoring a quick-fire 65, and the other batters helping India to a massive second innings score. This put Shubman Gill second on the list of most runs in a single test match, just behind Graham Gooch. England didn't last too long in the second innings, thanks to Akashdeep's brilliant 6 for 99, registering his first ever fifer and his best figures in test. His balls that nipped off the pitch and came in at the batsman were an absolute treat to watch. India went on to win by 336 runs at a ground where they had no wins on the last 9 occasions. They were able to pull it off on the back of Siraj's brilliant 6-wicket haul in the first innings, Shubman Gill's 430 odd runs in the entire match, and Akashdeep's brilliant 6 for 99 in the second innings. And India showed England that this new team under Shubman Gill was not to be taken lightly. Then it was time for the all-important third test match at Lord's, one of the most iconic cricket grounds. But what I think is the slope at Lord's must be more popular than the ground itself, because I must have heard more mentions of the slope than anything else in that test match. England won the toss again, and finally they chose to bat first on a pitch that looked pretty decent for batting. Root being Root got another 100 to his name, and Jasprit Bumrah bowled a brilliant spell, taking 3 quick wickets at the start of day 2, sending Root, Stokes and Vokes packing, and England were 271 for 7 at that point. But India allowed England to come back into the test match again, and their tail wagged. Thanks to Braden Carter's 56, they were able to get to a respectable total of 387. In the first innings, Rishabh Pant was injured but still managed to get 72 and stitched a very important partnership with KL Rahul, who got to a ton. But what I think one of the most important game-changing moment in that series was the Rishabh Pant suicide run out. When India were 250 for 3, they were in a pretty comfortable position. That run out changed the course of the game. KL Rahul got out immediately after his 100, and India were left 264 for 5 before Jadeja notched up yet another half century and stitched partnerships with Nitish Kumar Reddy and Washington Sundar, which allowed India to get to a total of 387. And from here, it was a one-inning game. And how can you forget the absolute cinema that took place in the last over of day 2? Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett came into bat 90 seconds late, which at that point, I believe they could have done better, but it wasn't to be, and Shubman Gill and the rest of the Indians were fired up in that last 10 minutes. Shubman Gill asking Zach Crawley to grow a pair. That was such a treat to watch. It was some statement from Shubman Gill. It told England that Virat Kohli might have retired, but India had yet another super competitive captain in Shubman Gill. In the second innings, England crawled their way to 192 thanks to a brilliant bowling spell from Washington Sundar, where he got 4 bowls. He had lovely drift, and he used the slope wonderfully to his advantage. India's happiness was short-lived when Jaiswal skied one to Jamie Smith, who took the catch pretty easily. I thought Jaiswal wanted to stamp authority on Jofra Archer, who had gotten him out in the first innings. He wanted to pull him over mid-wicket, but he couldn't do that. Unfortunately, India kept losing wickets and they were left reeling at 58 for 4, stumps day 4. Early on day 5, Ben Stokes got the prize wicket of KL Rahul, then came into bat and injured Rishabh Pant. He played a couple of shots, but having injured his hands, Jofra Archer bowled a steamy delivery and got Rishabh Pant's off-stump cartwheeling. India were left reeling again at 82 for 7 before Ravindra Jadeja and Nitish Kumar's small partnership gave them a ray of hope, but Nitish Kumar got out just before lunch on day 5. Now that must have been one tasty lunch for England, as they were just 2 wickets away and India needed 80 more runs to seal the deal. But Ravindra Jadeja along with Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Siraj showed immaculate resistance. When India were just 22 runs away and the pitch had looked like it had eased up and the new ball still a few overs away, Mohammad Siraj middled a ball to Shoaib Bashir and somehow it rolled to the stumps and the bails fell and there was stunned silence in India's dressing room. Mohammad Siraj couldn't believe what had just happened. Ravindra Jadeja couldn't believe what had just happened. And India believed. The fans believed, the players believed, the dressing room believed. They believed they could pull this off. But it was fate that day and they couldn't pull it off. Nevertheless, fair to say it was a below average piece of batting display by India's top order and middle order, apart from KL Rahul, who looked really good. But a test match that could have had India leading 2-1 now had England leading 2-1 and India chasing the lead. Then came Manchester, where England again won the toss and chose to bowl on a greenish wicket, and India actually played pretty well for their 358 in the first innings, with Sudarshan showing really good grit and he scored 61 off 150 balls. Jaiswal and Rishabh Pant scoring half centuries. And how can you forget that effort from Rishabh Pant? He tried to reverse sweep Chris Wokes, but unfortunately the ball hit his boot and fractured his foot. But even after that, he came into bat with a fractured foot. He played basically with one foot and he even got 2 boundaries to Jofra Archer before getting out to him. It was a top effort from Rishabh Pant, and this guy really has no limits. Stokes bowled brilliantly for his 5 for 72 before notching up 140 in the first innings, and England got to a big target of 669, and again it looked like an entirely different pitch than what it was when India batted first on this wicket. Root got to 150, their tail wagging again, Cast getting to 47, and after this India had absolutely no chance in the test match. Forget winning. They would have to play out over 140 overs to even seal a draw. India were left underground in the very first over of their second innings when Chris Wokes struck twice in the first over, Sai Sudarshan and Jaiswal walking back into the pavilion. Then came in India's captain Shubman Gill, who was under the radar for his 2 low scores in Lords. I don't know how he was under the radar when he had just not notched up 600 runs in the series. And Rahul and Gill took India to safety. India didn't lose even 1 wicket in the last 2 sessions of day 4. That gave some hope to the Indian fans that they could steal a draw and they could pull off this miracle. At the start of day 5, Gill and Rahul played cautiously, but unfortunately the ball stayed low for KL Rahul and he was struck LBW and had to depart for 90. Gill eventually got to a fighting 100, a real captain's knock, but he got out just before lunch when he tried to chase a wide delivery off Jofra Archer's bowling. And even at that point, it looked like England were the favourites and that they would wrap it up pretty quickly in the next session. But what followed was not on England's menu, was not on anybody's menu. A gritty display of batting by Washington Sundar and Jadeja meant that India went just 4 wickets down at the end of the second session of day 5, and from here on England were left chasing the game. They needed a miracle to pull off a victory here. Sundar and Jadeja continued batting, and at one point the draw looked inevitable. Then started the handshake saga. I believe it was a really poor piece of sportsmanship shown there by England. It wasn't a problem that Ben Stokes wanted to finish the match as he had tired legs, tired bowlers, and there was one more test match to go. But the problem started when they were not able to accept that the other two batsmen wanted to bat on, and after what they had done in the last two sessions, they deserved 100. They absolutely deserved 100. But England should have showed some class there, and they should have accepted the fact that both the batsmen wanted to bat on to get to their hundreds, because they had really put the hard work in the last two sessions, and it was their time to reap rewards. And after some theatrics that included Harry Brook bowling some lollipops, dollies to Ravindra Jadeja and Washington Sundar, as if Harry Brook wanted both of them to get to a century as soon as possible so that he could go home. That again was really poor piece of sportsmanship shown by England. Sundar and Jadeja did manage to get hundreds, and India managed to pull off an absolute miracle of a draw. And it reminded me of India's Sydney draw in 2021 when Ashwin and Vihari batted for their lives and were able to pull off a miracle. This brought an end to the fourth test match, and India still needed a win in the fifth one to level the series. But one very important thing that they did carry into the fifth test match was momentum. England yet again opting to bowl, but this time it was a green top. It was probably one of the best bowling decks in the entire series. India scratched their way to 224 with Karun Nair leading the way with a half century after almost 8 years after his triple hundred back in 2016. Gill unfortunately was run out for 21, which again I feel was a very important moment in that match. And England's first innings, what should I say? Ben Duckett and Zach Crawley were playing like they were chasing a big target, not in a test match but in a T20 game. They got to 92 of just 13 overs before Ben Duckett tried to reverse ramp Akashdeep and was nicked off. Zach Crawley continued his merry approach and got to 64 before again he threw his wicket away trying to pull over mid-wicket. England at one point were 142 for 2, and it looked like they would have yet another big lead to their name before Mohammad Siraj bowled an inspiring spell, taking 3 wickets in that spell, 3 prize wickets of Jacob Bethel, that beautiful in-swinging Yorker, Joe Root and Ollie Pope. India wrapped up the innings pretty quickly and England had a small lead of 23, and it was yet another one-inning showdown. What followed was a blistering century from Yashasvi Jaiswal, who was dropped twice by England, and he made them pay for it. Not to forget Akashdeep's 66 that set the tone for India's lineup, and it gave the dressing room a sense of relief and confidence that they could go out there and express themselves. That was really a very, very good innings from Akashdeep, notching up his first half century. He came in as a night watchman and he played as a batsman. Jadeja got to another half century before the Washington Sundar blitz when he smacked 4 sixes in a span of a few overs and got India to a very good total of 396, setting a target of 370 odd for England. Yet again, England's openers got off to a pretty brisk start before Mohammad Siraj put the brakes on in the last over of the day by bowling a searing Yorker into Zach Crawley's off stump. And the day ended with India on top. After a couple of early wickets from India, they just couldn't take the wickets, and Harry Brook and Joe Root got to hundreds yet again in the series. At 300 for 3, it looked like it was England's game to lose and that they would just walk their way to victory. But it wasn't to be. What followed was why Test cricket is regarded as the highest form of cricket. A comeback for the ages by India. It all started with the off-cutter from Akashdeep when Harry Brook tried to absolutely belt that one out of the park, but the bat flew out of his hands and he was caught at mid-off by Mohammad Siraj. I guess Harry Brook got a little overconfident. He had smacked a few in the previous over. Maybe he wanted to finish the match as soon as possible, but that's not how games are won. Games are won when the batsman who has been your best gets you over the line, and Harry Brook didn't do that. He got out. Look, I'm not going to be too harsh on him as he's a young player and he's a very, very good player, no doubt. But he has a few things to learn, and one of them being not throwing away your wicket at a key moment of the game. Even at that point, it didn't look like India would stage a comeback. I mean, Joe Root had just gotten to his third 100 of the series. Jacob Bethel was at the crease. Jamie Smith was yet to come. Jamie Overton was yet to come. Even with 9 wickets for England, it looked like they would absolutely cruise to a victory here. But Jacob Bethel had gotten off to a very, very slow start and he got impatient. He tried to smack Prasidh Krishna's ball to the offside, but his middle stump got uprooted. At that point, India thought just maybe they could pull off a miracle here. The ball started moving, the clouds came in, the lights turned on, and just as this happened, Joe Root nicked one off to the keeper. Maybe it was the pressure, he could have left that ball actually. It was a very wide delivery ball by Prasidh Krishna. It swung late, that was there, but he could have left that. And Joe Root's reaction said everything. He thought maybe, just maybe he opened the doors for India and the match was not going to get over as early as they would have thought it would before. And the runs absolutely stopped coming at that point off the bat. They were coming off leg byes. Jamie Smith was really struggling at the crease and Siraj was bowling beauties after beauties. Krishna was bowling brilliantly. Then came the rain to play a spoilsport. The match was abandoned for the day. It was poised beautifully for day 5, the 25th day of the series. All 5 test matches had gone to day 5 and this was yet another absolute masterclass of a match. India were just a few overs away from the new ball and England had the advantage of the heavy roller. Even at that point it looked like England might just get away with it because Jamie Overton got off to a flyer. He got 2 fours of the first 2 balls of Prasidh Krishna's bowling on day 5 and after that the ball continued to do tricks. Then came the turning point of the match when Siraj got Jamie Smith nicking to the keeper. Then he got Jamie Overton leg before wicket and Prasidh Krishna got Josh Tongue with that beautiful bold. Then came in Chris Wokes with a broken shoulder. At 300 for 3, nobody would have thought the match would go on to day 5, let alone Chris Wokes would be needed to bat on the next day. As we all know, cricket is a funny game. It did funny things in the 5th test match. Chris Wokes came into bat. Gus Atkinson got a 6 of Mohammad Siraj's bowling. And at that point, the game could have gone anywhere. They were 9 down. India needed just 1 ball to seal a miracle. And that's exactly what Mohammad Siraj did. On his first ball of his 180th over of the series, he bowled a 143 km per hour Yorker. He bowled his heart out and he got the off stump down to the ground. He did his famous Sioux celebration and India pulled off an absolute miracle. They pulled victory from the jaws of defeat. It was a test match to remember. It was a test series to remember. The scoreline of 2-all perfectly summed up the test series. At various points in the series, England were ahead, India were ahead. England messed up, India messed up, and the scoreline was 2-all. Mohammad Siraj bowled brilliantly in the absence of Jasprit Bumrah. He topped the wicket-taking charts in the series with 23 wickets, and he was the only bowler to survive 5 games in the entire series. He bowled his heart out in the entire series. Meanwhile, Shubman Gill topped the charts with 754 runs. Ravindra Jadeja, 500 plus runs. He played like a batsman in that series. 5 50s, 1 century, that fighting knock at Manchester. What a revelation for Ravindra Jadeja. KL Rahul too, for his 500 plus runs, played wonderfully. For an opener to open in a difficult place like England, he played very, very well. They were the top 3, meanwhile England's Harry Brook and Joe Root being the last 2 of the top 5 batters. Fair to say, England would be disappointed with the result of the match as well as the series being 2-all. India would be very happy for a young team to come in and to give a very, very good fight to Bazball and to draw the series 2-all and pull off 2 miracles in Manchester and the last match in Oval. It was such a wonderful display of cricket by India. Well, that brings an end to my Anderson Tendulkar Trophy Series review. Stay tuned for more cricket updates. Looking forward to more cricket. See you next time.